This will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to showcase the greatness of American world-class athletic competition as we celebrate our nation's 250th year. The World Cup will also be an incredibly significant economic opportunity for countless American workers and businesses. It's expected to drive more than $30 billion, Johnny. I don't know about that. That sounds like a lot of money.
No, that's true.
Are you sure?
100%.
How much does the country get out of that?
9 days before the biggest World Cup in football history, FIFA should have been celebrating. But behind closed doors, they were panicking. The colossal stadiums were ready. The qualifying teams had punched their tickets, and hundreds of thousands of seats had already been sold. To the casual observer, everything appeared to be perfectly in place for the ultimate sporting spectacle. But beneath that polished surface, a catastrophic loss of trust was quietly fracturing the tournament. Governments were raising unprecedented diplomatic concerns. Fans were realizing they were being entirely priced out of their own sport, and dangerous geopolitical tensions were spilling directly onto the pitch. This wasn't a coordinated boycott. It wasn't an official cancellation. It was something far more dangerous for the billionaires running the global game. As the countdown to 2026 entered its final, agonizing hours, the tournament FIFA expected to unite the planet was rapidly degenerating into the most controversial World Cup ever staged. 9 days before kickoff, FIFA found itself fighting a desperate battle for its own survival, and it had absolutely nothing to do with football. Welcome back to Royal Scope, where today, we pierce through the billion-dollar PR campaigns to expose the stark, uncomfortable reality behind the 2026 World Cup. For most of the past decade, this specific tournament was confidently presented as FIFA's ultimate crowning achievement. The grand blueprint was staggering: 3 massive host nations, 48 competing countries, more matches than any tournament in human history, colossal stadiums, record-breaking corporate sponsorships, and the largest television audiences ever recorded. Every single metric about this project was meticulously designed to showcase football's unstoppable, highly profitable global expansion. Yet, as the final days ticked away, a fiercely defiant narrative began to choke out the pre-packaged excitement. The global conversation surrounding the tournament was no longer centered on tactical brilliance, world-class star players, or potential title contenders. Instead, the headlines were completely dominated by bitter political disputes, severe travel restrictions, heightened security threats, shocking unaffordability, and a massive wave of public frustration. Across multiple continents, sovereign governments were suddenly being forced to answer difficult, highly sensitive questions. National football associations were facing relentless pressure from furious supporter groups, while investigative journalists bypassed the training camps entirely to expose cracks in the tournament's very foundation. Now, FIFA is certainly no stranger to scrutiny. Virtually every modern World Cup receives its fair share of criticism before the opening whistle. But what made 2026 uniquely volatile was the sheer scale, complexity, and variety of the resistance. There was no single controversy to sweep under the rug, and there was no single opponent to silence. Instead, deep structural concerns were flooding in from every direction at once, creating a perfect storm that threatened to derail the entire corporate operation. Some factions focused heavily on restrictive immigration and visa policies, while others targeted the astronomical, borderline predatory costs confronting everyday travelers. A much deeper, more philosophical question was also taking root. Had football's governing body become fundamentally disconnected from the working-class people who actually keep the sport alive? On their own, each individual crisis might have been manageable for a well-funded public relations department. But together, they fused into a dangerous, widespread public perception that the largest World Cup ever organized was becoming completely indefensible. And just as FIFA executives were trying to downplay the growing unease, one qualified nation exposed a profound structural flaw that the organization could no longer ignore. The World Cup has always proudly claimed to unite disparate countries through the universal language of sport. Yet, the tense lead-up to 2026 demonstrated exactly how fragile that beautiful corporate sentiment becomes the moment brutal global politics enters the equation. Few stories illustrated this harsh reality more vividly than the immense, exhausting challenges surrounding Iran's participation in the tournament. On the field, their qualification was entirely flawless. The squad earned its spot with dignity. The players executed their tactics perfectly, and their passionate supporters celebrated a hard-fought victory. But crossing the finish line on the pitch turned out to be the easiest part of the journey. Suddenly, football administrators who were used to negotiating television rights found themselves thrust into high-stakes rooms normally reserved for career diplomats and international security officials. Complex travel permissions, heightened security arrangements, rigorous
This will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to showcase the greatness of American world-class athletic competition as we celebrate our nation's 250th year. The World Cup will also be an incredibly significant economic opportunity for countless American workers and businesses. It's expected to drive more than $30 billion, Johnny. I don't know about that. That sounds like a lot of money.
No, that's true.
Are you sure?
100%.
How much does the country get out of that?
30 billion.
20%? No, do we get like a percentage of the gross or anything?
Respected mainstream commentators, high-ranking politicians, and even former football executives began publicly voicing their deep concerns. National media outlets dedicated primetime coverage to dissecting the ethical and financial long-term costs of the expansion. Discussions regarding FIFA's governance began appearing on parliamentary floors, in major newspapers, and within highly organized supporter unions. In several countries, fans openly questioned whether the sport's governing body had become so blinded by aggressive commercial growth and corporate manifest destiny that they had completely lost sight of the ordinary fan experience. Before we look at how this financial breaking point altered the tournament entirely, we want to know what you think. Is the massive expansion of the World Cup a genuine celebration of global football, or has it simply become an untouchable corporate cash cow that has lost its soul? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to keep tracking the hidden forces shaping global sports, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. The financial burden weighing on the fans quickly shifted from a minor complaint to an absolute crisis. Every World Cup promises to deliver unforgettable, lifelong memories, but for the average supporter attempting to map out a journey in 2026, those memories carried a ruinous price tag. Travel costs between the vast host cities skyrocketed, accommodation prices surged to unprecedented levels, and ticket prices sparked fierce, widespread outrage. For fans planning to follow their national teams across multiple time zones, vast distances, and different countries, the mathematics of attending simply didn't add up. This economic reality created a stark, undeniable chasm between FIFA's grand corporate vision and the economic reality of the working class. From the comfort of the executive suites, the perspective was simple. Demand remained remarkably strong, and stadium seats would inevitably be filled by someone. But from the perspective of the traditional fan base, the tournament no longer felt like a global festival. It felt like an ultra-luxury product reserved exclusively for the wealthy. Social media amplified this deep-seated frustration into a unified movement, as prominent supporter groups organized massive awareness campaigns and journalists published scathing investigations detailing the true, exorbitant cost of being a loyal fan. The fierce criticism wasn't merely about expensive tickets. Football fans have begrudgingly accepted high costs for decades. What made 2026 distinct was the suffocating feeling that ordinary, lifelong supporters were being systematically pushed to the absolute margins of their own sport. The World Cup has always relied entirely on its match-day atmosphere to sell its global brand. The deafening songs, the vibrant colors, the raw human emotions, and the generational traditions created by traveling supporters are precisely what make the tournament a masterpiece. Without them, even the most star-studded matches on the pitch lose their magic, morphing into sterile television studio products. FIFA aggressively defended its pricing strategy, with officials repeatedly arguing that overwhelming global demand completely justified the steep market rates. Yet, the public perception refused to be swayed by corporate economic models, and in the high-stakes arena of global sports, public perception often matters far more than official statistics. Then, a fascinating psychological shift occurred, making the entire narrative even more complex. Despite the heavy criticism, despite the profound controversies, and despite the endless ethical debates, the pure, raw excitement for the actual football never truly died. In fact, the closer the calendar crawled to the opening match, the more the anticipation seemed to mutate and grow. This created a bizarre, almost hypocritical contradiction. The very same supporters who were actively condemning FIFA's corporate greed were still staying up late passionately discussing tactical formations and potential world champions. The same journalists breaking stories about organizational dysfunction were still dedicating hours to analyzing player matchups. The same countries locked in fierce diplomatic standoffs were still preparing world-class squads capable of making sports history. The dark controversies surrounding the tournament had become completely impossible to separate from the event itself. Yet the magnetic pull of the beautiful game kept dragging the world's attention back to the green grass. Perhaps this paradox reveals the true, terrifying power of football. The sport does not erase deep political disagreements. It does not magically solve economic inequality, and it certainly does not eliminate systemic institutional corruption. But what it does possess is a completely unique, almost hypnotic ability to temporarily hijack the focus of the entire human race.